Annie winced as Aria scrubbed her face, trying to conceal her freckles. Despite the discomfort, Annie obeyed Aria, who assured her that beneath the freckles lay a fair complexion worth enhancing. With a touch of makeup, Aria transformed Annie's reflection in the mirror. Awestruck, Annie wondered if the radiant girl staring back was truly her. "You can have these products," Aria offered, leaving Annie stunned by her generosity. Though her words seemed kind, Aria's inner thoughts revealed her sharp perception. She suspected Annie of using Miel's high-end makeup and decided to leverage Annie's materialistic tendencies to secure her loyalty. To solidify this budding alliance, Aria gifted Annie a ribbon for her hair, a token marking her as a maid in her service. However, Aria withheld the gold brooch given to Jessie, subtly reminding Annie that trust had to be earned. Annie, flustered but eager, practiced tea party etiquette under Aria's instruction. Each correction and compliment from Aria drew Annie deeper into her influence. Aria's inner monologue, however, hinted at her true intentions, turning Annie into a pawn for her greater schemes. As the day transitioned to Miel's birthday, Aria watched with a mix of contempt and anticipation. Lavish gifts flooded the estate, stark reminders of Aria's own exclusion from such extravagance. Simmering with frustration, she resolved to seize the opportunity to expose Miel's darker nature. The arrival of Count Rochent further fueled her determination for revenge, but an unexpected twist left her unsettled. A stranger, named Lane Pino, whose presence diverged from Aria's memories of the past. "This is different. Could my plans be at risk?" Aria wondered, her confidence shaken as she prepared for the uncertain complications ahead. Miel's birthday celebration was in full swing, with Lane presenting her an array of luxurious gifts from his master. His charm left Miel flustered, while Aria watched from the sidelines, her mind racing. "Who is this wealthy noble, and why haven't I heard of him before?" she wondered, her irritation bubbling at the unpredictability of this new player. As Lane fawned over Miel, Aria caught sight of her wearing the dress Oscar had gifted her, identical to one he had sent Aria. "How thoughtful of him to treat us both equally," Aria mused, masking her annoyance with a sweet smile as she approached the group. Her entrance captured Lane's attention. He was visibly taken by Aria's beauty, just as men often were in her past life, but she dismissed him, deeming him an irrelevant pawn in her larger schemes. Later, at the grand ballroom, Aria arrived dressed in the same gown Oscar had gifted her. Her timing was perfect, and her entrance drew whispers from the guests. Presenting Miel with a bouquet of flowers, Aria delivered her calculated blow. "Lord Oscar must have sent us similar dresses because we're sisters. How thoughtful, don't you think?" Miel's smile faltered, her composure cracking under the weight of Aria's tactful jab. As nobles whispered judgments about Aria, calling her shallow and envious, she calmly silenced them through flawless etiquette. Her poised demeanor left them second-guessing the rumors surrounding her. "No matter how much you gossip, the truth will eventually overshadow the lies," she thought, savoring her victory. But the night took an unexpected turn when Oscar arrived at the party, something he'd never done in the past. Aria froze, stunned by his presence and his warm interaction with Miel. Doubts crept into her mind. Why is he suddenly paying attention to her? Did I misstep? She wondered, forcing a smile. Kane, meanwhile, couldn't hide his admiration for Aria, his flushed cheeks betraying his feelings. Oscar, too, was captivated by her grace, his gaze lingering on her every movement. Sensing their attentions, Aria smiled knowingly. "You're here for Miel, but your heart is with me. How amusing," she thought, maintaining her composure. Feigning humility, Aria excused herself, leaving the ballroom. But Oscar followed, his heart racing as he approached her parlor. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Oscar asked politely. "Of course not," Aria replied with a smile. "Really, it took you long enough. I thought you'd never come. I went through 3 pots of tea while I waited. But I'll let you off the hook since you're here now," she thought as she watched him take a seat. "Your face looks thin and worn. I wonder if it's because you've been thinking about me. I like the idea of that," she mused inwardly. Oscar let out a sigh. "Here I go again," he thought. "The person I should be concerned about is Lady Miel, and yet I keep turning my attention toward Lady Aria." Reaching into his pocket, he produced a letter. "This is a reply to your letter from before. I thought I would see you here today, so I brought it in person." he said, extending it to Aria. Thank you, she said, her face lighting up as she held the letter. I can't believe I was fretting about this so much this morning, she thought, unable to hide her excitement. Did you enjoy the party today? She asked. Oh, I don't really like parties all that much, he replied. Oh, what a coincidence. It's the same with me, she said. I only ever hear people talk behind my back at parties, so it's annoying, she thought. I don't have many acquaintances, so I feel a bit awkward at parties. Aria added, looking slightly forlorn. Oh, personally, I like to meet my acquaintances at other places, Oscar replied calmly. I can see that, actually, she said, laughing lightly. Pardon? He asked, confused. Somehow, it feels more comfortable talking to you here than when we were downstairs, she replied with a smile. Oh, yes, that makes sense. It is a little harder to speak with you in front of Lady Miel, he admitted, looking tense. Lady Aria and I are just pen pals. So why do I feel so guilty in front of Lady Miel? He thought, glancing away. Will you be joining us for dinner? Aria asked politely. I was going to return home and head back to the academy early tomorrow morning, he thought. Yes, he replied instead, surprising himself. I'm glad. It can get quite lonely here in the manor. It'd be nice to have you around, Lord Oscar, because we are friends now, right? Aria said with a warm smile. Friends? He asked, looking perplexed. That's right. We're friends. That's all. We are. So it's fine, he thought, trying to convince himself. At dinner, Lane couldn't stop praising Miel. You're amazing, Lady Miel. I hear you've given the Count business advice on several occasions. You're still young, yet you clearly have excellent business acumen, he cheered. I heard a few things here and there. That's all. I'm just glad to be of help, Miel replied, blushing. My master also listens to your advice. You know, Lane said proudly. What's with this guy? Aria thought, annoyed as she watched. He's clearly trying to pair his master with Miel. Miel's fiancé is the eldest son of a duke, whose rank is just below the royal family. I don't know what backwater Lane's master is from, but it's dull watching him waste his time like this. I should express my gratitude to your master as well, Miel said calmly. He has been extremely busy lately, but I was going to arrange a meeting with you at some point, Lane replied. Look, Oscar, I have no place in this family conversation. Don't you feel bad for me? Aria thought, glancing at him as he ate silently. The most entertaining part of this dinner is seeing Oscar's conflicted expressions. Kane has also been glancing this way for some time now, but I'll just ignore him, she thought. I appreciate you visiting me despite your busy schedule. It makes me happy. I'd like to thank you for this necklace once more, Lord Oscar. I really love it, Miel said warmly. It's as if you knew I wanted this and got it for me. So, Lord Oscar? She asked, her cheeks flushed. Oh, yes, it was nothing. But I'm glad you like it, he replied quickly. Miel looked tense, glancing at him. I see you've prepared a proper lover's gift for her. That means he's split between the two of us. Then I'll make him debate long and hard before he eventually chooses me. Aria thought with a smirk. Oh, by the way, father, I made something for you while you were away, Miel said, handing an embroidered handkerchief to the Count. Why, this is some amazing needlework, her father said, beaming. Do you like it? It isn't perfect, but I wanted to give it to you as soon as possible, Miel said, smiling sweetly. Nonsense! This is the world's most beautiful lily, her father exclaimed. It's like the handkerchief I gave the Count doesn't even exist, Aria thought bitterly. I have to admit, it's good, considering Miel made it, she thought as she watched silently. This is impressive work, Miel. A splendid handkerchief, Aria complimented aloud. Gosh, I'm so happy to hear you say that, Aria. So this is how it feels to be acknowledged by my older sister, Miel said, looking flushed as she held her cheeks. What is she saying right now? That obvious act of hers is so annoying. Aria thought, I've actually prepared handkerchiefs for all of you. I'm still not very skilled, but please accept them, Miel said warmly, ordering her maid to distribute the gifts. Goodness, what should I do? I think I'm missing a handkerchief for you, Aria, Miel said, glancing her way. This kind of development isn't even surprising anymore, Aria thought, rolling her eyes. Oh, that must be because I visited suddenly today. Please take mine, Lane said hurriedly. Gosh, no, I couldn't possibly take a guest's gift, Aria replied with a smile. Even if she had more handkerchiefs, she'd say there weren't any in front of me, Aria thought. watching Miel's mock regret. It's all right, Miel. We're family living in the same house, aren't we? You can give me one another time. And you're already so skilled, so I can't wait to see how spectacular your embroidery will be in the future. You'll embroider one for me too, right? Aria asked sweetly. Of course, Aria. I'll have to work harder if I want to live up to your expectations, Miel replied, twitching slightly. Don't worry. You've always done so well, even without trying, Aria exclaimed. No matter what she does, the idiots around her always applaud her. So why would she ever have to make an effort? Now that that's settled, let us toast once more to Miel's birthday, the Count declared as they all raised their glasses cheerfully. Since then, even after a long time had passed, Aria still didn't receive a handkerchief from Miel. Miel probably used underhanded means to make those handkerchiefs. I just need to find out how, Aria thought as she glanced out her window. Later, Aria continued Annie's face treatment, working carefully. We put a lot of high-quality fragrances and herbs in it, so you'll see results soon, she reassured Annie, who looked startled. No, miss. I'm just happy that you called for me again, Annie exclaimed. Good. I was right about her, Aria thought, smiling. Annie, do you know how Miel got so good at embroidery? Aria asked, startling the maid. She found a good teacher who embroidered the design's outlines for her. Miel just filled in the rest, Annie revealed nervously. So that's how, Aria thought. Good work, Annie. I hope you'll continue to serve me well, Aria said, smirking as Annie quivered. Lane had become a familiar presence at the castle, arriving frequently with extravagant gifts for Miel. The Countess, ever welcoming, invited him to join them for lunch. As Lane graciously accepted, Aria observed the situation intently, her sharp mind questioning Lane's true intentions and the identity of his mysterious master. Although Lane claimed his visits were merely an act of courtesy on behalf of his master, he refused to divulge much about the man, other than that he was a high-ranking noble deeply interested in Miel. Aria's suspicions deepened as she probed Lane with carefully crafted questions. She theorized that his master might be a powerful foreign noble, or perhaps even the crown prince, as few within the empire could rival the son of a duke. Lane, however, adeptly dodged her inquiries, leaving Aria simultaneously intrigued and uneasy. She resolved to keep a closer eye on Lane and his master, realizing they might become obstacles in her future plans. For now, though, she decided to focus on more pressing matters. The next morning, Aria was woken by Jessie, who noticed her mistress's swollen eyes. Though Jessie worried Aria had overexerted herself, Aria brushed it off and began preparing for the long-awaited noblewoman's gathering. It was her first major event since her coming-of-age ceremony, and she brought Annie, one of her maids, along. Annie, dressed beautifully for the occasion, hesitated, unsure if she should be accompanying her mistress to such a prestigious event. Aria, with her usual charm, reassured Annie and encouraged her to hold her head high, subtly aware of Annie's aspirations. At the gathering, the noble ladies warmly welcomed Aria, showering her with compliments on her appearance and charisma. The conversation soon turned to Sarah, who arrived late, clutching a bouquet of flowers. The other ladies buzzed with excitement as Sarah revealed her recent interactions with Marquise Vincent. She recounted how, at the coming-of-age ceremony, the Marquis had noticed the handkerchief she had embroidered, praised its beauty, and even asked to keep it. To everyone's delight, he followed this with a request for a dance. Now he had sent Sarah a letter and flowers, inviting her for a stroll by the lake before winter's end. The noblewomen squealed with joy at the prospect of Sarah's romance with the Marquis, who was widely known as a reserved and work-focused man. Aria, however, remained composed, recalling what she knew of Marquise Vincent's future. While the other ladies gushed over the social advantages of such a match, Aria offered Sarah measured advice, to consider her own feelings rather than succumbing to societal expectations. Aria's thoughtful words moved Sarah, who realized she had never reflected on her own happiness amidst the whirlwind of attention. She thanked Aria, feeling grateful for her friendship. Meanwhile, Annie observed the exchange in silence, her thoughts a mixture of envy and longing. She couldn't help but wonder how someone as ordinary as Sarah, a viscount's daughter with no extraordinary beauty, had caught the attention of a marquise. Annie began to dream of her own chance to ascend the social ladder, believing her appearance might give her an edge if only she had the opportunity to mingle with nobles. Unbeknownst to her, Aria had already noticed the flicker of ambition in her maid's eyes. Smiling to herself, Aria resolved to keep Annie close, recognizing her as a potential piece in the game she was carefully orchestrating. Aria clasped Sarah's hands gently. "Your hands are so warm, Miss Sarah," Aria said, smiling. Sarah blushed, her cheeks tinged with pink. "But Aria, you said the Marquis's hands were cold. Shouldn't you hold them tightly next time to share your warmth with him?" Aria teased. Sarah's eyes widened. "Do I need to be that bold? Of course. And after that, you can play your trump card, your embroidered gloves. That'll sweep him off his feet." Aria laughed, letting go of Sarah's hands, leaving her friend laughing and flustered. Gosh, but winter is nearly over. Would gloves even make sense as a gift now? Sarah asked, her brows furrowed. "Well, you two have strolled by the lake twice now, right? That must be his favorite spot. A gift given there would be even more memorable." Aria reasoned. "Perhaps he keeps inviting you there because he's inexperienced in courtship and doesn't know how else to express himself." Sarah giggled. "How do you know so much about these things, Aria? You're younger than me, yet I keep coming to you for advice. It's a little embarrassing. Commoners often talk about love and romance. I've picked up a thing or two," Aria replied with a mischievous smile, concealing her inner thoughts. "In truth, it was personal experience, memories from my past life." The two laughed as their conversation came to a close. Aria walked Sarah to her carriage, holding her hand. "I'm sad you're leaving already," Aria said with a sigh. "Me too. But I'll start on those gloves as soon as I get home," Sarah replied. "Oh, Aria, I think I'll use the Marquise's family crest as the pattern." Aria nodded, but her gaze shifted to a carriage outside. Her smile disappeared. "Him again?" she thought, watching Lane step out of the carriage. "Hello, Lady Aria," Lane greeted warmly, tipping his hat. "I've come to see Lady Miel. Is she home?" "She is, but our parents are out," Aria replied flatly. "No matter. I'm just here to say hello since I had some free time," he said, heading toward the manor. Aria blocked his path, her tone icy. "I can't allow you to have tea alone with an unmarried lady without parental consent." Lane chuckled. "Come now, my lady. We already know each other well. Do I seem untrustworthy? How can I think kindly of a man who showers Miel with extravagant gifts?" Aria thought. "Goodness, I told you, Miel is engaged. If rumors spread about her spending time alone with another man, it could be disastrous. Don't you agree?" she said, forcing a polite smile. Sarah noticed Aria's expression darken. Aria seemed so tense around him. Sarah stepped in, holding Aria's hand gently. "Lady Aria, how about we join Mr. Lane for tea? I was just thinking I'd like another cup," Sarah suggested with a warm smile. Aria relaxed slightly, though inwardly she reprimanded herself. "I've let my emotions get the better of me again. Well, I don't mind," Aria said, returning Lane's gaze. "Oh, I have a present for you, Lady Aria," Lane said suddenly, producing a bouquet of tulips. "Tulips? This small bouquet for me, but a mountain of gifts for Miel?" she thought wryly. "They smell lovely," she said sweetly. "They're my master's favorite flower," Lane explained. "The national flower? How patriotic," Aria mused. Lane smiled. "I bought them near the manor. They're nothing special." "Near the manor? Then these must be from a shop in the capital. So his master is from around here, after all," Aria deduced. Once seated for tea, Aria's mind raced. Could his master be the crown prince? But he's engaged to Duke Frederick's daughter. It doesn't make sense. To calm her thoughts, Aria signaled Annie, who brought over her hourglass in its case. She placed it discreetly beside Aria. "Mr. Lane, you mentioned that your master admired Miel's intelligence?" Aria inquired. "Yes, he was impressed by her ability to quickly acquire and apply information," Lane replied. Aria's eyes widened. "Did you say the fur business?" "Yes, Lady Miel gave insightful advice to the Count about it, particularly regarding the prince's fashion preferences," Lane added. "What? That was my advice!" Aria thought, fury boiling within her. "All my efforts were for nothing. The Count sees me as nothing more than baggage." Her fists clenched. "Is social class all that matters?" she muttered under her breath. Noticing her rising anger, Sarah called her name, but Aria turned the hourglass, rewinding time by 5 minutes. She recomposed herself as Miel entered the room. "Welcome, Mr. Lane. Apologies for being late," Miel said with a sweet smile, dressed in a lavish gown. Lane turned his attention to Miel, discussing the casino reopening. Miel's responses revealed her naivety, and Aria stifled a laugh. "Do you have a different opinion, Lady Aria?" Lane asked, noticing her expression. "I believe the casino should be shut down," Aria said firmly. Her argument dismantled Lane's points, her sharp logic leaving him stunned. Was that helpful, Mr. Lane? Aria asked, a sly smile on her lips. The Rosent family was having a serene lunch with Lane one afternoon when Count Rosent broke the silence. It's about time I come up with a new business plan, he announced, his tone contemplative. Are you wrapping up the fur business? Lane inquired curiously. Yes, we've done well with it, but now it's time to move on, the Count replied, folding his hands. Lane's expression brightened. Will you be considering Lady Miel's ideas again? She has a knack for such things. Miel, always eager for the spotlight, smiled radiantly. Since spring is coming and the weather will warm up, I think light clothing will be in demand. Garments made of silk or soft velvet would be perfect. They're materials everyone loves. That's a fine suggestion, Lane agreed enthusiastically, his voice carrying a note of admiration. The others chuckled, charmed by Miel's confidence. Aria, however, stayed quiet, focused on her food. She had resolved not to share any innovative ideas with the Count anymore. How can she present such an uninspired idea so shamelessly? She thought, her eyes flicking to Miel. What about you, Aria? What do you think? Count Rosent asked, turning his attention to her. Me, she said, caught off guard. Both the Count and Lane nodded encouragingly. Aria smiled faintly. Well, since it's spring, I suppose Lady Miel is right. Silk and velvet sound like solid choices. Despite her outward agreement, she was firm in her resolve. I won't feed any information to people who won't return the favor, she thought, noticing their slight disappointment at her lack of input. Still, she couldn't leave it at that. Oh, now that I think about it, I'd love a velvet dress, too. I don't have one yet, she added sweetly, ensuring they understood she wouldn't give advice for free. Later, in the privacy of her room, Aria turned to her books. Rather than wasting my ideas on others, I should cultivate my own knowledge. That's how I'll secure my future. Annie, her maid, interrupted her musings with a shy request. Miss Aria, may I have a day off next week? I'd like to attend the spring festival. The festival? Aria asked, looking up. Oh, right. The spring festival is coming soon. After a moment's thought, she smiled. Of course, Annie. Take 2 days off if you'd like. Annie's face lit up. Really, miss? Thank you so much. Feel free to borrow a dress from my closet, Aria added, pointing to the wardrobe. But avoid wearing anything gifted to me. Annie's gratitude overflowed. You're so generous, Miss Aria. Most of those dresses were bought to make me appear modest, so it's no loss to me. Besides, this is a chance to leave a favorable impression, Aria thought. The day of the festival arrived and Annie departed, looking radiant in one of Aria's dresses. I'll be off then, she said cheerfully. Wait, Aria called, stopping her. That dress is too simple. Wear this one instead, she said, holding up a more elegant piece. Is it really okay? Annie asked, her cheeks flushing. Of course, Aria replied with a smile. Let the other maids be jealous. It'll work to my advantage. As Annie left, Jessie lingered nearby, watching quietly. Jessie, aren't you interested in going to the festival? Aria asked. Oh no, miss. I'm fine staying here, Jessie replied, looking nervous. Aria frowned. Be honest. Do you mean you want to go but feel you can't? Jessie hesitated. I would like to go, but I have my duties here. Then you should go, Aria said, turning back to her book. Jessie's eyes widened. Pardon? You deserve a break. Take a day off. I don't have anything planned, so I'll be fine on my own. After a moment of surprise, Jessie beamed. How about we go together, miss? Aria blinked. Together? Before long, Aria found herself at the lively festival, dressed modestly and accompanied by Jessie and a few guards. The streets buzzed with excitement. Children laughed, merchants called out their wares, and the scent of street food filled the air. Jessie darted from one stall to another, her enthusiasm infectious. Miss Aria, look at this! Isn't it adorable? Jessie exclaimed, holding up a small trinket. Aria allowed herself a faint smile. I've never experienced a festival like this before. In my past life, I was chased away from them for ruining the atmosphere. As they watched a musician perform, Aria's thoughts wandered. Spring symbolizes new beginnings. Can my life, centered on revenge, ever bloom into something beautiful? Or will I only sow resentment? Even so, I want to live this second chance my way. Her reverie was interrupted by a familiar voice. What a surprise to see you here, said Asher, bowing politely. Aria tensed. Oh, she said curtly, hoping he would leave. Do you enjoy festivals? He asked, his tone light. It seems we run into each other quite often. Aria forced a smile. I found the atmosphere pleasant, but not so much anymore, she replied coolly. Asher chuckled. Ah, I see. He didn't leave, his gentle smile unwavering. Why is he so persistent? What does he want? Aria thought, growing irritated. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud bang, followed by screams. Panic spread as the crowd rushed in all directions. What's happening? Bombs? Aria thought, fear gripping her. Amid the chaos, Asher grabbed her hand. This way, miss, he said firmly, leading her through the panicked crowd. Overwhelmed, Aria could only follow. They eventually reached a quieter street. As she caught her breath, Asher, still holding her hand, asked, Are you all right? Aria quickly pulled her hand away, feeling flustered. I've noticed this recently. I lose all reason when I'm flustered. Why did I think his hand was the hand of a savior? She thought, turning her gaze away, her cheeks flushing. I'm glad you're okay, Asher said, laughing lightly. If it's all right with you, these handkerchiefs were being handed out at the festival. Would you like to use one? He offered, holding out a handkerchief. Aria took it with a simple, thank you. Is he trying to provoke me, she thought, glancing around the unfamiliar street. By the way, where are we? Aria asked, confused. I'm not sure, Asher replied, looking unbothered. You were running ahead without hesitation. Wait, you don't know where we are? Aria asked in disbelief, turning to him. I know, right? Asher laughed, unfazed. After returning the handkerchief to him, Aria couldn't help but think, I didn't want to let my guard down with this guy in all the chaos. She began to feel more unsure as she looked around. I've never seen this part of the city before. Did we really run that far? Her foot began to hurt, so she slowed her pace, considering turning back. Where are you going? Asher asked. I need to head back. Do you know the way back? Asher asked, following her. Maybe, Aria said, glancing at the sky where it seemed a little lighter. It looks like it's lighter over there, so that might be the way back. Is that so? Asher replied, almost sarcastically. As Aria winced in pain, Asher quickly dashed ahead and crouched before her. Why don't you climb on my back? He suggested. No, thank you, Aria exclaimed, tensing up. You look exhausted, Asher teased, causing Aria to flush. Even so, I'd rather not owe you anything. Absolutely not, she thought, pulling off her shoes and continuing forward, walking past him. To think a noble lady like you is walking barefoot. Do you prefer that over getting on my back? Asher asked. You're the only one here, so it doesn't bother me, Aria replied, not slowing her pace. Is there any need for you to be so wary? Asher pressed. I could be of use to you, my lady. You never know. I don't know. I can't agree with that, Aria responded firmly, her frustration growing. It's too late to expect me to think highly of you. I think that's because you don't know much about me, Asher remarked. You don't know a thing about me either, Aria shot back. Nonsense, Asher said with a laugh. He leaned in, whispering, I think I know quite a lot about you, my lady. I guess he's heard rumors about me. I didn't think there were any more rumors circulating after Miele's birthday, but maybe Miele's been spreading more herself, Aria thought. I know that I shouldn't judge a book by its cover, especially in your case, Asher continued, causing Aria's eyes to widen. What is he trying to imply? Aria thought, turning away, feeling irritated. What is it about his eyes that make me feel so unsettled? His gaze seemed strangely familiar, and she couldn't pull her eyes away. As he leaned closer, her heart raced, and her face flushed. She closed her eyes as he whispered, Soon, I will tell you everything about me, but only after we grow a bit closer. He then stood up and began walking away. We'll meet again when the time comes. I believe we'll see each other again soon enough, my lady, Asher called over his shoulder, leaving Aria standing still, confused and unsettled. What? I don't want that at all, she thought. Until then, farewell, Asher said, walking away. Aria, still dazed, turned as Jessie's voice called out to her. Miss! Her maid and the guard rushed toward her. Here you are, miss. Are you hurt anywhere? Jessie asked, looking concerned. No, I'm fine, Aria replied, trying to steady herself. Since we've enjoyed the festival enough, we should head back. We don't know what else might happen. The carriage is waiting, Jessie urged. Yes, let's go back, Aria agreed, still lost in her thoughts. Was that a hallucination or a dream? She wondered, feeling confused. Back home, Aria tried to shake off the encounter as Annie excitedly shared her experience at the festival. You know the fireworks? I asked the merchants afterward, and they said there were some fireworks that were supposed to be part of a performance, but they were scattered around the audience's seats. Apparently, they all went off at once, causing a lot of trouble, Annie explained, her voice turning somber. Is that so? Aria asked absently, her mind elsewhere. The festival wasn't well managed. It could have been much worse. At least the injured were treated at the palace, Annie added. That's a relief, Jessie said. Aria's thoughts turned inward again. That guy, he was right about one thing. I don't know anything about him. All I can guess is he's a nobleman from the countryside. He lacks manners and seems to think he knows everything. But how can he claim to know so much about me? Aria thought, her frustration mounting. That's right, Miss Aria. I heard some new gossip today, Annie said excitedly, snapping Aria out of her thoughts. Gossip? Aria asked, intrigued. It's about Miss Meal, Annie hesitated. What is it? Aria asked. Annie showed her a beautiful hairpin, and Aria raised an eyebrow. Well, if it's for your master, then go ahead and tell me. Well, I heard that Miss Miel sent a letter to the lady of House Frederick. Apparently, it was mostly about Lord Oscar, Annie revealed. Meanwhile, a carriage pulled up at the Frederick Manor. Miel and her maid Emma stepped out, greeted by an important guest, Isis, who smirked. Welcome, Lady Miel. Why don't we have a light chat about our future today? She asked, her tone hinting at something more. Emma's past was one filled with hardship and loss. After her husband took his life, unable to handle the massive debt he had accumulated, Emma's life took a tragic turn. In a desperate attempt to manage the debt, he had even sold her noble title, but despite this, the debt remained unchanged. With no other option, Emma began working as a maid at the Rochant estate, hoping to find some stability in the midst of her sorrow. However, the stress of her circumstances took a severe toll on her health, and she tragically lost her child. One day, while she was working at the estate, the Countess of Rochant, who was aware of Emma's noble background, spotted her and recalled seeing her at the coming-of-age ceremony. The Countess, impressed by Emma's grace and noble bearing, offered her a position as her personal maid. I've been looking for a maid who could take care of my daughter, the Countess had said calmly. A noblewoman like you would be perfect for the role. Emma had accepted, and soon she was employed as a high-ranking maid in the household. But Emma's happiness was short-lived. The Countess died during childbirth, leaving Miel in Emma's care. Despite the loss, Emma knew her responsibility now lay with Miel, her charge. It's my job to take care of you, Miel, Emma thought, looking at the young girl with a protective gaze. No matter what, you must be happy. As Emma watched Miel and Isis share tea in the garden, her mind wandered back to these memories. The conversation between Miel and Isis was lighthearted, with Miel clearly enjoying the food, and Isis offering more. This food is so delicious, Miel remarked with a flushed face. I told you you'd enjoy it, Isis replied cheerfully. Please, help yourself to more. But Lord Oscar will be here soon, Miel said softly, still thinking about him. I wanted to speak with you for a bit, Lady Miel, Isis said with a smile, so I told Oscar to come a little later. Miel's face lit up at the chance to spend more time with Isis. Oh, I'm happy to chat longer with you, Lady Isis, she said, her joy clear. Isis, always calculating, saw this as an opportunity to further solidify her influence over Miel. There are things about you that I admire. Miel, Isis began, her eyes narrowing slightly as she observed her. Your status, your manners, your appearance, all perfect. And the way you try to understand me, to please me, while still being clear about your own desires, you're exactly what I'm looking for. Miel, in her youthful naivety, was flattered by the praise. She smiled brightly, grateful for Isis's attention. Do not worry, Lady Miel, Isis continued, watching her intently. You will surely be engaged to Lord Oscar, but it's simply a matter of time. Her tone was confident, even assured. Really? Miel asked, her voice filled with awe. Of course, Isis replied, her face flushing slightly, because that is what I wish, and if that is what I wish, then it shall be so. Miel, overjoyed, beamed. Yes, if that is your wish, then I will become Lady Miel Frederick, she exclaimed. Isis, for her part, had a clear vision of her plans. As the most powerful noblewoman in the capital, second only to the royal family, she held real authority in House Frederick. With her cunning intellect and strong political acumen, she had won the support of many other noble families. Some even speculated that she could one day become the next crown princess. If she could make Miel part of her family, she would ensure that no one could ever harm her. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lord Oscar. He appeared surprised to see Miel there. "You're here, Oscar. Come sit with us," Isis said calmly, gesturing for him to join them. Oscar, still visibly uncertain, sat down reluctantly. "Why is Lady Miel here?" he muttered under his breath. But Isis, ever the strategist, gave him a smirking look. "It's been so long, Lord Oscar," Miel greeted him, her face concerned. "You look tired. Are you all right?" She immediately poured him some tea. Oscar, trying to maintain his distance, replied, "It's fine," and attempted to brush off her concern. "But I still want to pour you some," Miel insisted, though her tone was gentle. "No need for that," Oscar said curtly, not wanting to accept her offer. Isis, however, stepped in. "You two will be betrothed soon," she said coolly, "but Lady Miel must wait until Oscar comes of age." Miel, a little embarrassed, teased Oscar lightly. "Honestly, you're so cold." Isis, always the mediator, urged patience. "Be patient with him, Lady Miel," she said calmly. "There's no rush," Miel replied, her smile returning. "I'm happy just being here." In her heart, Miel thought of the future. "Soon I will become Miel Frederick and live as a perfect noblewoman," she dreamed. "A life free from all the ugliness I've experienced before. In a few years, this place will feel like home." After their tea, Miel said her goodbyes and left the manor. As her carriage pulled away, the air was still, the tension palpable. Isis, watching her leave, turned to her brother, her face hardening. "I told you not to take your relationships for granted," she snapped, her voice low and serious. "Do you think everything will be fine once I become crown princess? You and I both know that our family's power is still insufficient." Oscar, looking guilty, began to speak, but Isis silenced him with a raised hand. "The nobility still lacks power. Our families need to unite, and I need the steadfast support of powerful nobles to govern this country," she continued, her voice steady but stern. "You know very well that this is the path to power, so stop acting like a child." She paused for a moment, then fixed him with a cold stare. "What do you think? Is it true that you're interested in that prostitute's daughter? The one everyone is talking about?" she demanded, her voice sharp. Oscar, taken aback, looked away, his guilt written all over his face. Isis took a step closer, her hand raising to slap him across the cheek. "I thought the Count was mad to bring someone like that into his household, and now you're showing interest in her?" Isis said, her eyes fierce. Oscar, his face flushing with shame, tried to speak, but Isis cut him off. "Don't worry, Oscar. If trouble arises, we can always eliminate the source of it. It's simple. You always pity the weak too much. You need to remember who you are. You're meant to carry the Frederick name, not sympathize with the helpless." Oscar, his fists clenched, struggled to keep his composure. "I know my place," he muttered, but it was clear he was no longer certain of what that place was. Isis, her tone softening slightly, pressed on. "Just follow my lead, Oscar. You know what to do. Apologize to Miel for neglecting her, and write her a letter saying it won't happen again. I'll handle the rest." Oscar, feeling the weight of her words, nodded reluctantly. Isis turned away, her fan snapping shut with a decisive flick. "I'll do it for you. Don't make me clean up after your mistakes," she said, walking away. Oscar was left alone, his thoughts a mixture of guilt and frustration. Back at Rossant, Aria was shocked when Annie burst into her room with a letter from Lord Oscar. "You've received a letter from Lord Oscar," she said excitedly. Aria, still confused, replied, "But I haven't responded to his last letter yet." Annie, not missing a beat, teased her. "You're really courting, aren't you? Everyone says Lord Oscar seems interested in you. He even sent you a dress as a gift." Aria, trying to remain composed, took the letter from Annie but couldn't help feeling a sense of unease. "Don't be silly," she muttered. "If I were to do something like that, I'd be the worst villainess on earth. I can't steal my sister's fiancé." But Annie, undeterred, replied, "It wouldn't be stealing. Lord Oscar hasn't even finalized his engagement to Miss Miel. It's not like she's the one he's interested in." Aria opened the letter, her heart racing as she read its contents. Her face turned serious as she read the final lines. "There isn't much time left before I graduate, so I will no longer be able to exchange letters with you. Please take care. Oscar." Aria's hands shook slightly as she closed the letter. Aria's hand trembled as she held the letter from Lord Oscar, her disbelief evident in her wide eyes and parted lips. The contents of the letter were so unexpected, so out of character for him, that she struggled to comprehend what could have prompted such words. What's going on? Why is he acting like this all of a sudden? She thought, her mind racing. The tension in her chest grew, and she felt her body begin to shake slightly. Miss, you don't look well. Please lie down and rest for a while, Jessie suggested softly, her voice filled with concern. But Aria remained frozen, her gaze fixed on the letter. Annie, go and bring some cold water quickly, Jessie instructed, urgency lacing her tone. Huh? Oh, yes, right away, Annie replied, rushing out of the room. Oscar, Aria thought, his name ringing in her mind. Why? Why now? Her thoughts were in disarray as she tried to make sense of his sudden change. The calm and reserved man she knew didn't seem capable of writing such words. Moments later, Annie burst back into the room, holding a tray of cold water, her expression frantic. Miss, something terrible has happened, she exclaimed, her voice high with alarm. What is it? Aria asked, finally snapping out of her daze, though her voice was faint. Lady Meal also received a letter from Lord Oscar, Annie said, looking visibly distressed. Aria's stomach sank. And? She prompted, forcing her voice to remain steady. She was boasting about it downstairs. She's been reciting the letter over and over to anyone who'll listen, Annie explained. I managed to memorize it because she kept repeating it. Annie paused dramatically, then said, It went something like this. Imagining you adorned with gold roses at our future engagement party makes my heart swell so much that I cannot fall asleep. Aria's eyes widened in shock. Oscar? Writing that? She thought. Disbelief flooding her senses. It was so unlike him, so far removed from the man she had come to know. The Oscar she knew was reserved, cautious, even distant. This letter sounded overly sentimental, almost fabricated. Annie's voice broke through her thoughts. Miss, I swear it wasn't Lord Oscar who wrote that. It had to have been Lady Isis. Everyone knows how cold he's been to Lady Meal. But whenever she visits Lady Isis, a letter like this magically appears, often with a gift attached. Lady Isis? Aria asked, her voice barely above a whisper as her mind tried to piece things together. Yes, Lady Isis Frederick. She's Lady Miel's biggest supporter, Annie continued. She's also the one who's been helping Miel gain influence. It's no secret that Lady Isis practically runs House Frederick, and it's clear she's orchestrating this. Aria's expression darkened. Lady Isis, the name felt heavy now, carrying the weight of newfound understanding. Aria realized she had underestimated her influence. In her previous life, Miel had gained immense power after marrying Oscar, and Aria had assumed it was through his authority. But now it was clear, Lady Isis had been the true source of that strength. Everything depends on her, Aria thought. She's not just supporting Miel, she's manipulating Oscar as well. If Lady Isis wants Miel to marry him, there's nothing he can do to stop it. The weight of this revelation pressed down on Aria. Despite all her efforts, her carefully laid plans seemed to be unraveling. Her advantage, her knowledge of the future, felt useless against the sheer power and influence of Lady Isis. Her maids watched her closely, their worry etched on their faces. Jessie broke the silence. Miss, please drink some water. You're trembling. Aria barely registered Jessie's words. She felt a sense of helplessness she hadn't experienced in a long time. Her mind raced for a solution, but nothing came to her. During lunch, Aria's despair only deepened. Miel sat at the table, proudly wearing the hairpin she had received as a gift from Oscar. That's a beautiful hairpin, Lane remarked, admiring the intricate design. Haha, I hear Miel received it from her fiancé, Count Rosent said with a proud smile. Aria clenched her jaw as she watched the interaction. Miel's smug expression only fueled her frustration. Should I just use the hourglass and snap her neck? She thought bitterly, though she knew it would change nothing. Her father's voice broke through her dark thoughts. By the way, what happened earlier? You suddenly left during the day, father, Miel asked sweetly, concern in her tone. I thought something serious had happened. Oh, it was just a minor issue with some tax payments, the Count replied. But Lane here resolved it. Aria's ears perked up. She recognized this conversation from her previous life. It was during this time that Kane had suggested a solution to a tax issue, earning the Count's trust and growing closer to him. Miel had benefited from his success, which further solidified her position in the family. As Lane explained the details of the tax problem, Miel looked unsure of herself. She hesitated before offering a weak suggestion to resolve the matter, relying on Lane's connections. Aria seized the opportunity to step in. "What about building a warehouse outside the capital?" Aria said, her tone calm and measured. "A warehouse?" the Count asked, intrigued. "Yes," Aria continued. "If you store the goods outside the capital and only bring them in when there's demand, you can avoid excessive taxes. You could even conduct transactions directly at the warehouse, turning private purchases into private possessions, which would significantly reduce costs." Lane's eyes lit up at the idea. "That's a brilliant solution." The Count nodded in agreement. "Indeed, it's simple yet effective." Miel, however, looked unsettled. She had been trying to appear competent, but Aria's suggestion had completely overshadowed her. That night, Aria lay in bed, unable to sleep. Her earlier triumph over Miel felt hollow. "What's the use of my knowledge if I can't solve the most important issues?" she thought. The shadow of Lady Isis loomed large in her mind. She sobbed quietly, the weight of her situation pressing down on her. How do I escape this fate? How do I survive? The uncertainty of the future kept her awake, her mind filled with questions that had no answers. The next morning, Miel was meticulously prepared for her visit to Oscar's manor. Her composure remained steadfast as she addressed Count Rosent. "Then I shall be on my way, father," she said calmly, her elegance evident as she stepped into the waiting carriage. The Count nodded approvingly, standing at the entrance to see her off. "Send my regards to Lady Isis," he instructed, his tone carrying warmth and pride. "I will," Miel replied softly, offering a serene smile as the carriage began to roll gently away. Annie, holding a tray as she exited the kitchen, paused in the hallway. Her expression was tense as she watched Miel disappear through the front doors. The moment the carriage was out of sight, she hurried toward Aria's room, her steps quick and purposeful. Without knocking, she burst in. Miss! Annie exclaimed, her voice high with urgency. Aria, seated by the window with a book in her hand, barely lifted her gaze. "Annie, I can hear everything from my room. There's no need to shout so loudly," she said, her tone calm but laced with wariness. "Oh, I'm sorry," Annie apologized, flustered. "Has Miel left?" Aria asked, shutting her book and setting it aside. "Yes, and she was fully dressed in the gown she received from Lord Oscar for Lady Isis' birthday party. It must have been Lady Isis who sent that gift, too," Annie declared with frustration. "And why do you think that?" Aria inquired, sipping her tea as Jessie stood beside her, refilling the cup. "Because it was tasteful," Annie exclaimed, her expression earnest. Aria chuckled lightly. "You may be right," she said softly, though her thoughts turned inward. "But what does it matter? Today was Lady Isis's birthday, a day of significance in noble society. The Crown Prince's coming-of-age ceremony was fast approaching, and rumors swirled that Lady Isis was being considered as a potential fiancé for him. With such a powerful ally supporting her, Miel's influence would only continue to grow, and Aria, lacking any real means to counteract her, couldn't help but feel the weight of her predicament. Without power, I'm destined to meet the same fate as before, she thought bitterly. Letting out a tired sigh, Aria stood. "I'm a bit worn out. I'll be lying down. Don't wake me until evening unless it's necessary," she instructed, moving toward her bed. "Yes, miss." Jessie and Annie replied in unison as they left the room. In the hallway, Annie glanced at Jessie nervously. "Do you think she'll be okay?" she asked, her voice low. Jessie didn't answer immediately, her expression unreadable. At Lady Isis's estate, Miel arrived in grand style. She entered the ornate halls with perfect poise, her presence commanding attention. Spotting Lady Isis in conversation with several nobles, she approached gracefully. "Lady Isis, happy birthday!" Miel said, her tone even and polite. "Thank you for coming, Lady Miel," Isis replied, her smile radiant as she acknowledged her guest. As the room's attention turned to Miel, compliments began to flow freely. "You're looking quite beautiful today," one noble remarked, their gaze admiring. Lady Isis glanced at Miel, noting her dress. "That gown suits you well?" she said. "Was it a gift from someone?" "Yes," Miel replied, beaming with pride. "Lord Oscar gave it to me." "Really? That gruff child actually did that? He must truly care for you," Lady Isis mused, fanning herself delicately. "If that's true, it would be wonderful," Miel replied, her cheeks faintly pink. It's thanks to your assistance, Lady Isis, that his affections have returned to me. Her expression softened as she continued, I had given up on the idea of a marriage with love, but perhaps I can allow myself to hope again. Lady Isis smiled faintly, but said nothing more. The celebration was lively, filled with laughter and chatter. At one point, Miel approached Lady Isis, her voice warm. My father sends his regards, my lady, she said. I see. Is the Count well? Lady Isis inquired. Very much so. His business thrives more each day, all thanks to your guidance, Miel replied cheerfully. Lady Isis's smile grew faintly sharper. The Count is wise. It's best to discard flowers that wilt too quickly. He will do well to remember that. Miel, unfazed, smiled back. I believe in my father wholeheartedly. Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden announcement of Lord Oscar's arrival. All eyes turned as he entered, his polished demeanor drawing murmurs of admiration. Lord Oscar? Miel whispered, her cheeks turning rosy as he approached. Reaching their table, Oscar greeted her politely. Have you been well, Lady Miel? Yes. Thank you for asking, she replied, her voice slightly breathless. Oscar's gaze briefly shifted, his expression unreadable. As he sat across from her, Lady Isis leaned in with a teasing smile. You two make quite the lovely couple, she remarked. Miel flushed deeply. Lady Isis, she exclaimed, clearly flustered. Before the teasing could continue, a butler rushed into the room, his voice urgent. His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince has arrived, he announced, stunning the guests. What? The Crown Prince is here? The room buzzed with speculation. Could the rumors of his marriage to Lady Isis be true? Someone murmured. Lady Isis herself looked taken aback, though she quickly masked her surprise. The Crown Prince has come to celebrate my birthday? She thought. The Crown Prince entered the hall with regal poise. Asher, in his royal guise, scanned the room before his gaze settled on Miel. Lady Miel Rosent, he said, his voice clear. Miel's head snapped up, her expression a mixture of shock and confusion. Your Majesty? She stammered. Asher's lips curled into a faint smile. That's strange. Have you grown shorter? Oh, perhaps it's because you're bowing, he mused. Miel straightened hesitantly, her face pale. Asher's smile faltered, his eyes narrowing. Who are you? He asked, his voice cold. His gaze hardened as he looked at her, realization dawning. This isn't her. Where is Aria? In Asher's study, the conversation with Lane reveals a critical shift in his investigation. Lane carefully explains that Lady Miel does not match the description Asher gave, suggesting instead that Lady Aria, the eldest daughter, fits better. Lane appears tense as he delivers this conclusion, aware of how strange it may sound given Aria's background. Asher, skeptical, questions the possibility. But I heard that girl used to be a commoner, he says, puzzled. Lane confirms this, explaining how 2 years ago, Count Rosent married a prostitute and brought her daughter into the household. Asher, resting his chin on his fist, processes the information. What I want to know, he says thoughtfully, is how a commoner could acquire so much information about the nobility in only 2 years. He then brings up the rumors of Aria's behavior, describing her as possessed or unruly, though Lane brushes these aside as gossip. Lane steers the conversation back to Asher's description of someone cat-like, a person who taunted him and evaded his grasp. I think Lady Aria fits that description, Lane insists. Asher, unconvinced but trusting Lane's diligence, is left to consider attending Lady Isis's upcoming birthday party to observe Aria firsthand. Lane's polite suggestion to see for yourself pushes Asher to make a decision, and after some teasing back and forth, Asher agrees. His smirk and jesting threat to make Lane count all the flowers in the capital if he is wrong injects a moment of levity into their otherwise serious discussion. The present-day scene at Lady Isis's birthday party quickly escalates. Asher's silent and intense gaze lands on Miel, and though he says nothing, it visibly unnerves her. The tension in the room grows thick until Miel, overwhelmed, collapses into Oscar's arms. Concerned, Isis questions Miel harshly, demanding to know what has happened between her and the Crown Prince. Miel, stammering, insists this is her first time meeting him, leaving Isis suspicious and frustrated. Internally, Isis reflects on her plan to use Miel as a pawn, but grows annoyed at the inconvenience of Miel's young age. Realizing she may have been too hard on Miel, Isis orders Oscar to take her home to rest. The party guests, meanwhile, gossip and whisper about the scene. Some dismiss Asher's behavior as awkwardness, speculating that he simply grew nervous and turned to Lady Miel instead of Isis. Isis quickly regains control of the situation, calming the guests by suggesting they meet at the Crown Prince's palace next time, subtly redirecting attention and restoring her composed image. However, as she orders a guard to investigate what happened between Asher and Miel, her internal worry resurfaces. Something has happened, and I wasn't aware of it. Her unease underscores her growing distrust and determination to uncover the truth. The focus shifts to Aria's quiet morning, where she wakes to find a table full of food prepared by her loyal maids, Jessie and Annie. Their cheerful effort to cheer her up through her favorite dishes softens Aria's mood. As she eats, Aria resolves to remain optimistic, reassuring herself that, even in difficult situations, solutions will present themselves if she stays calm. That evening, Aria's fragile composure is shattered when she sees Oscar helping Miel out of a carriage. Her father, Count Rochent, rushes to Miel's side, worried. Oscar calmly explains there was an incident at the party, and Miel fell into a deep sleep afterward. His soft tone and attentiveness toward Miel deepen Aria's sense of disbelief. Her father insists Oscar stay the night, citing propriety, and Miel sweetly asks him to remain as well. Oscar reluctantly agrees, further unsettling Aria, who watches the scene unfold from a distance. Oscar, how could you not look even once in my direction? Is everything really over between us? She thinks, overcome with shock and frustration. Back in her room, Aria collapses onto her bed, her earlier resolve crumbling. She sobs quietly, unable to reconcile her emotions, while her maids watch helplessly. Later that night, unable to sleep after resting during the day, Aria wanders into the corridor for some air. To her surprise, she spots Oscar standing alone, gazing silently into the distance. Flustered, she instinctively ducks behind a wall. Why am I hiding? More importantly, I need to talk to him, she thinks, forcing herself to face the moment. However, as Oscar turns to leave, Aria rushes back to her room. Seizing the opportunity, she uses her hourglass to reverse time. Returning to the corridor, she approaches him directly this time. Lord Oscar, she calls softly, drawing his attention. He looks startled as Aria, breathless and trembling, pleads with him. Please don't cast me aside, she says, tears streaming down her face. She is surprised by her own emotions, unable to stop the tears that come so suddenly. Oscar, perplexed, watches as Aria clings to him, begging him not to abandon her. Aria woke up to the sound of birds chirping, sunlight streaming softly through her windows. The sun rises yet again today, she thought to herself, still feeling the emotional weight of the previous night. The memory of pleading with Oscar flashed in her mind. Please don't abandon me, she had cried, tears falling freely as she clung to him. Embarrassment consumed her as she kicked the bedsheets in frustration. Why did I have to faint at that timing? Aria grumbled to herself, covering her face with her hands. The realization struck her. Could it be that using the hourglass drained all my energy? I woke up, rushed to Oscar's balcony, and then cried my eyes out. No wonder I fainted. Despite reasoning it out, she still couldn't forgive herself. Even so, I shouldn't have done that. If I look back on it now, it looks like I was begging Oscar to take me back, she thought bitterly. The more she remembered her actions, the more furious she felt. What Aria didn't know was what happened after she fainted. Oscar had carefully carried her back to her room, tucking her into bed. You poor thing, he had thought as he gazed at her peaceful, sleeping face. You have no one to lean on, not even in this large estate. That must be why you came to me. You were just so lonely. Later, as Oscar left the Rochent estate in his carriage, his mind remained full of thoughts. Don't worry, Aria. I made this choice to keep you safe. If we become related this way, even my sister won't be able to harm you anymore. I hope someday you'll understand why I did this. Meanwhile, back in her room, Aria sat up, holding her head. I think Oscar carried me back here, but I can't even remember properly. Was I embarrassed because I clung to him so desperately? Or because I fainted? Or is it just the whole situation? She thought, groaning inwardly. Her maid, Jessie, entered the room, drawing open the curtains. Miss, would you like to go outside? The weather is lovely today, Jessie asked kindly. No thanks, Aria replied flatly. She still felt too unsettled to enjoy the outdoors. Jessie, glancing out the window, noticed Miel seated in the garden with her friends. I suppose Lady Miel has invited her friends over again, probably to brag about Lord Oscar, Jessie muttered under her breath. Their conversation was interrupted by Annie, who entered the room excitedly. Lady Aria, I have good news, she announced, catching Aria's attention. Good news? Aria asked, still half lost in her thoughts. Remember when Lady Miel returned with Lord Oscar from Lady Isis's party? Her eyes were really swollen then, right? Annie prompted eagerly. Aria's brow furrowed. Yes, I remember. Even with swollen eyes, she was still boasting about returning home with Oscar, Aria said dryly. Annie leaned closer, her voice dropping conspiratorially. It turns out the Crown Prince appeared at the party and asked Lady Miel a bunch of questions. She was so shocked she started crying. Aria's eyes widened slightly. The Crown Prince? She thought. I suppose that confirms he's going to marry Lady Isis. And that's not all, Annie continued with triumph. All the gifts Lady Miel received that day, they were actually prepared by Lady Isis's maid. I heard it from someone who works at House Frederick. Aria froze as the pieces fell into place. Lady Isis? So this was all orchestrated by her, Aria realized, her mind racing. She clenched her dress tightly. My situation hasn't changed, but now I know the truth. I didn't fail to bewitch Oscar. It was Lady Isis interfering all along. Her confusion and depression melted away as newfound resolve surged within her. So Lady Isis is the real enemy, she thought, a determined smile creeping onto her face. Her sudden expression startled her maids, who exchanged excited looks. Annie, Aria called sharply. Yes, miss. Shall I prepare your meal? Annie asked eagerly. I'd like to bathe first, Aria replied, stepping out of bed. Yes, miss, Annie said, scurrying off to prepare the bath. Aria straightened her posture, her confidence restored. All right, I'll gather my wits and start fresh, she thought to herself. Miss, your height! Jessie suddenly exclaimed, looking surprised as she took in Aria's appearance. Huh? Aria blinked, unsure what Jessie meant. Later, Aria stepped outside with her maids, drawing immediate attention from Miel and her friends. Miel's voice rang out in mock cheer. Gosh, it's been a while, Aria. You've been locked in your room so much that it's hard to get a glimpse of you. One of Miel's friends giggled, adding, Oh dear, if you aren't feeling well, you should just stay in your room. That might suit you better. Aria smiled coolly, ignoring the jab. I think I'll head out to buy some new clothes. I've grown taller, so nothing fits me anymore. I'm envious of those who manage to keep their childlike stature even as they grow older. Wouldn't you agree? Her calm words struck Miel and her friends speechless. Well then, excuse me, Aria added, turning gracefully to leave. Miel's cheerful expression darkened as she watched Aria's back. She really is an eyesore, Miel thought bitterly. Aria reflected on her recent growth spurts. The hourglass must be affecting my body. Am I sacrificing part of my lifespan by using it? I need to be more cautious. From now on, I'll only use it when absolutely necessary. Later, while shopping for clothes with her maids, Aria treated them to a premium cafe. As they dined, Jessie brought her a newspaper. Scanning the headlines, Aria's mind began to churn. The nobility are losing customers due to luxury monopolies. This reminds me of a case from my past life. A low-ranking noble manipulated the market, earned massive profits, and vanished before being caught. Could I use a similar strategy? A slow smile spread across her face. To fight Lady Isis, I need resources, money. And if I play my cards right, I might just find a way to get it. Meanwhile, across the street, Asher spotted Aria from a distance, his gaze lingering as she sat unaware. Aria spends some leisure time with her maids, Jessie and Annie, at a cozy cafe. The three engage in casual conversation, and Aria learns a bit more about her companions. Jessie, full of excitement, shares that she has younger twin brothers who work on the family farm. Annie, not wanting to be left out, reveals that she has an older brother who works as a bookkeeper at an inn near the plaza. Aria listens carefully, not just out of politeness, but with her ever-calculating mind. She sees potential in Annie's connections, particularly her brother. I could use someone like that to sell the products I acquire, Aria muses internally, silently appreciating Annie's value beyond her duties as a maid. Her growing schemes for wealth and influence take precedence in her thoughts. Suddenly, their peaceful moment is interrupted by the unexpected arrival of Asher, who steps into their corner with a bouquet of vibrant tulips in hand. Lady Aria Rochent, we meet again, he greets calmly, drawing open the curtains with a confident smile. Aria is momentarily stunned. Asher, she blurts out, surprised. You look different every time I see you. Did you have a growth spurt? Asher smoothly brushes aside her question, explaining that he came to check on her after their last encounter during the festival. Aria recalls how he helped her back then, though his sudden departure had left her puzzled. Annie leans closer to whisper in Aria's ear, her tone frantic. "Miss, that man was staring up at us from the street earlier." Aria dismisses the notion, but agrees to have tea with Asher, leaving her maids at a nearby table. Despite their concerns, Jessie assures Annie, "The guard is at the door. Miss Aria will be fine." Asher and Aria sit together and their conversation begins on a tense note. Aria immediately grows suspicious of the tulips. Jessie had previously informed her that these premium flowers are exclusively sold near the Imperial Palace, and the ones Asher brought look freshly picked. "Did you really just happen to buy these?" she questions, her tone sharp. Asher maintains his composure, claiming it was a spur-of-the-moment purchase after spotting her. Aria isn't convinced. The flowers still have droplets of water on them. "Did you sprinkle water on them to make them seem fresh?" she accuses. Yet Asher's calm denial persists, and he even finds amusement in her sharp deductions. As the exchange continues, Aria notes that he doesn't seem like a man in love. His playful smile and unflappable demeanor suggest he's enjoying her reaction instead. The conversation takes a surprising turn when Asher mentions her involvement in the Rochent family's fur business. Aria stiffens. How does he know about that? She wonders. She's certain her father never publicly credited her, and she had specifically used the hourglass to erase her outburst in front of Lane. Was it Lane who talked about me? She thinks, frustration mounting. Asher doesn't elaborate but confirms her suspicions with a knowing smile, leaving Aria feeling exposed and unsettled. To Aria's further surprise, Asher invites her to a private gathering of intellectuals to discuss social, political, and economic topics. Though the gathering is typically male-only, he insists that her insights would be invaluable. Aria is intrigued. Such gatherings are rare opportunities to gain knowledge she wouldn't usually have access to. But her caution prevails. Can I really trust this man? I don't even know who he really is. She ponders, torn between curiosity and skepticism. Sensing her hesitation, Asher assures her she doesn't need to decide immediately. Rising from his seat, he gently plucks a stray petal from her hair. It rested so naturally, it seemed like a part of you, he remarks with a disarming smile before leaving. His words and actions leave Aria quiet but tense, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts. Shortly after, Lane visits the Scent Estate, bringing gifts for both Miel and Aria. Miel gushes over the beautiful lilies Lane presents to her, while Aria calmly accepts a bouquet of tulips identical to the ones Asher had brought. When Lane mentions that the tulips were grown in his master's garden, Aria is stunned. The connection between Lane and Asher suddenly becomes clear. So the tulips, they're his, she realizes, her suspicion deepening as the mystery surrounding Asher grows. The Rosent family dined together, with Count Rosent in unusually high spirits. I would have prepared a better meal had you informed me earlier that today would be your last day, the Count said, his tone jovial. Not at all. Thank you for your hospitality thus far, Lane replied, smiling. Some of my master's efforts have recently borne fruit. I'll be assisting him with those projects going forward. I see, the Count said, his smile faltering slightly. It's unfortunate that you must leave us so soon. As Lane spoke, Aria's mind churned with questions. He says his master grows tulips in his garden, but they're only sold in a shop near the Imperial Palace. What is he trying to imply? Does he mean his master is loyal to the nation? And if so, why send the flowers to me? The Count interrupted her thoughts with a pointed question. Is this because you didn't agree with the suggestion I made? Lane looked momentarily confused. Pardon? Oh no, not at all. The Count smiled knowingly. You wanted to hear what Aria thinks. While you're still here, Lane, you should hear her opinion too. Excuse me? What do you mean? Aria asked, her tone uncertain. The Count grinned. I believe Lane has taken a liking to you, Aria. What do you think? Lane looked tense, his usually calm demeanor slipping. You're being rather direct, my lord. Aria's expression darkened as she considered the implications. Is this man trying to use me to secure his master's favor? Not even through his master, but through the servant himself? How utterly insulting. Lane isn't a bad catch, the Count joked, laughing. Darling. The Countess snapped, glaring at her husband. Aria seethed internally. I didn't expect much from the Count, but this is truly offensive. I agree. Lane has been a great help to our family, Miel chimed in sweetly. You're not courting anyone, Aria. I think this could be a good match. Aria smiled coldly. Really? In my opinion, you seem like a better match for him, Miel. Don't be silly, Aria. I have Lord Oscar, Miel replied smugly. Oh, right. Lord Oscar comes by so rarely I almost forgot about him, Aria said, feigning surprise. Miel's expression turned frosty. He may not visit often, but he sends me gifts frequently. I suppose you wouldn't know that since you never receive any gifts yourself. Aria smirked inwardly. She knows it's Lady Isis who sends those gifts. How can she be content with such a hollow relationship? Lane cleared his throat, attempting to diffuse the tension. Well, Lady Aria doesn't seem interested, but I'm flattered by the suggestion nonetheless. It's because Aria is still young, the Count said dismissively. Let me know if you're ever interested, Aria. Aria clenched her fork tightly, her hand trembling slightly with anger. So he thinks my opinion doesn't matter? Typical. Marriages between nobles are nothing more than transactions to them. After lunch, Aria returned to her room, still fuming. She changed into a more comfortable dress and sat down with a book, but her thoughts kept returning to the events at the table. It seems Lane's master is no longer interested in Miel. That's good enough for now. He likely gave up after the debacle at Lady Isis's birthday party. Still, who exactly is this man? Her musings were interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. Jessie looked uneasy as she answered it. Who could it be at this hour? Lane entered abruptly, looking flustered. Excuse me, I forgot to give you this letter earlier, along with the bouquet. My master insisted you receive it immediately. A letter? Aria asked, intrigued. She opened the envelope and read the contents. Dear Lady Aria Rosent, have you been faring well lately? If you have made your decision, please give my servant your answer. Sincerely, Asher. Aria's eyes widened. Asher, she said aloud, startling Jessie. Lane smiled. Yes, that is my master's name. So all those gifts were from Asher? Aria thought, her mind racing. Wait, is the reason Lord Asher sent gifts to Miel? There was some confusion, Lane explained quickly. But I assure you, my master has no interest in Lady Miel. Those gifts were always meant for you. Aria glared at him. Does he think I care about those ridiculous flowers? You said the tulips were grown in your master's garden, right? Aria asked pointedly. And they're his favorite flower, but those tulips are a rare variety only found within the palace grounds. Lane froze, his expression faltering. That is true, he admitted cautiously. Could Asher really be the crown prince? Aria wondered. But then she recalled the rumors from Lady Isis's birthday party. The crown prince was there, wasn't he? If that's true, Asher and the crown prince can't be the same person. Or can they? Have you decided on your answer? Lane asked, breaking her train of thought. I'll attend the gathering, Aria replied after a pause. Aria sat among her friends, her thoughts drifting as the others chatted animatedly with Sarah. Was this the right choice? She mused. I only hope Asher doesn't have any hidden motives. A skill, huh? No one's ever described me like that before. I've always been called stupid or vulgar. Have I been holding myself back all this time? Her thoughts were interrupted by two ladies hurrying toward her. Lady Aria! We heard you were the one who gave love advice to Lady Sarah? One said. Her cheeks flushed. Pardon? Aria responded, surprised. How did you know the perfect moment for her to hold the Marquis's hand? We heard he was completely smitten afterward, the second lady exclaimed. Aria hesitated, then replied, Well, I was a commoner before, so I've heard plenty of romance stories. Commoners tend to express their feelings more openly, so we'd often share such tales. The lady's eyes sparkled. That's incredible. You must be so knowledgeable because of that. That's a lie, Aria thought. I was just speaking from my own experience. I'm not sure if my advice would always be helpful, she said aloud, but feel free to ask me anytime. Really? I'd love to fall in love too. I'll definitely come to you for advice when the time comes, one said eagerly. Me too, the other chimed in. My advice worked for Sarah only because the Marquise was already interested in her, Aria thought. I don't plan to get as involved with these girls, so it doesn't matter much. The conversation shifted as the ladies turned their attention to Sarah. The Marquise must be so gentle. You two make a wonderful pair. Sarah blushed, clearly pleased. Do you think so? As the chatter continued, one of the ladies frowned. Oh, Lady Aria, speaking of romance, have you heard the awful rumors about you? Rumors? Aria asked, confused. The ladies exchanged incredulous looks. You haven't heard? They're saying you're trying to seduce Lord Oscar to upset Lady Meal. That rumor is true, though, Aria thought. She put on an innocent expression. Goodness, how absurd. I'd never do such a thing. That's exactly what I said, one lady exclaimed. But no one believed me. The two embraced her in sympathy. Emma and the maids must have spread that rumor, Aria guessed, suppressing a smirk. Thankfully, Lord Oscar was seen attending to Lady Miel at Lady Isis's party, so the rumor was dismissed, the other added. But before that, it felt like we were being slandered ourselves. Goodness, I wasn't even aware of the rumor, Aria said softly. What's important is that my plans have been disrupted, she thought. Should I enlist Asher's help now? The ladies noticed her distant expression. Lady Aria, you seem deep in thought. Do you have someone you're interested in? One teased. What? No, it's nothing like that, Aria replied quickly. You're blushing. Who is it? They pressed. Please calm down, she pleaded, trying to change the subject. Whoever it is, I'm jealous, Sarah said with a wistful smile. At home, Annie couldn't contain her excitement over her new clothes. Where should I keep these? I hope the right occasion comes along soon, she said with a bright smile. Jessie shared in her excitement. However, Aria interrupted. Did I not mention it? From now on, you two will be my ladies-in-waiting, so you'll need to wear these outfits to work. Ladies-in-waiting? Jessie and Annie echoed in disbelief. Annie's eyes sparkled as she exclaimed, Does that mean we'll get to attend parties with you? Aria confirmed with a nod. Exactly. From now on, you two will be my ladies-in-waiting. They quickly changed into the elegant dresses Aria provided. It's so pretty, Annie murmured in awe. Good, Aria replied. Also, I'm bringing in a live-in maid starting today. As my ladies-in-waiting, I'll expect you to work hard alongside her. Yes, Miss Aria, thank you, they replied, bowing gratefully. Annie frowned slightly. If I'd known, I could have found the perfect maid for you. But Emma mentioned sending someone last minute. Well, how could I refuse a maid sent by Miel? Aria remarked with a knowing smile. Internally, she reflected, Emma's probably sending another spy. The last one failed, so they're trying again. When the new maid arrived, she introduced herself nervously. My name is Barry, Miss Aria. Aria froze momentarily. Barry. In my past life, Miel sent her to manipulate me. She even poisoned Miel and framed me for it, Aria recalled. Keeping her expression neutral, Aria said, Pour some tea for us, Barry. And as for you two, she added to Jessie and Annie, I have more gifts for my loyal ladies-in-waiting. Barry obediently picked up the teapot, but fumbled slightly. Your hands are shaking, Aria scolded, slapping her hand lightly. Do you not know how to pour tea properly? I'm sorry, Barry stammered. You shouldn't do things that require apologies in the first place, Aria retorted. As Barry continued making small mistakes, Aria chastised her repeatedly, slapping her hand each time. Finally, she commanded, The tea's gone cold. Go brew a fresh pot. Barry fled the room, trembling. Turning to Jessie and Annie, Aria remarked, It seems this maid isn't properly trained. I'll need your help disciplining her. Leave it to us, Miss Aria, they exclaimed eagerly. Good, Aria thought with a smirk. Let's see how long you last, Barry. The next day, Aria arrived at a secret gathering organized by Asher. Led underground by a butler, she pondered, Why all this secrecy? If something goes wrong, I can always use the hourglass to escape. Entering the room, she was greeted warmly by Asher and the attendees. It's nice to meet you all. Please call me Aria, she said graciously, hiding her family name. Introductions followed, with one man, Vika, catching her attention. I recognize him, a staunch supporter of the nobility. The group began debating the casino's operations. Aria listened quietly, noting how everyone addressed Asher formally, except her. One noble argued to shut the casino down, citing its potential harm, while another countered, highlighting its tax revenue and influence. Vika pointed out that shutting it down could lead to illegal gambling and other issues. Aria raised her hand to speak. In the long run, the casino may fail as a business, tarnishing the Crown Prince's reputation. The solution is to hand its management to someone else. Her suggestion sparked murmurs. Vika opposed the idea, but Aria elaborated. If the Crown Prince steps away from the casino now, it might even reinforce the narrative that he made a wise decision. Asher intervened, supporting her idea. By transferring the casino to the nobles, we reduce their influence later while protecting the crown prince's honor, he said. They're adopting my idea? Aria thought, feeling a quiet satisfaction. After the meeting, Asher approached her. What did you think of the gathering, Lady Aria? It was enlightening, she replied, then added firmly. But before we discuss further, who exactly are you, Lord Asher? I won't leave without an answer this time. Aria's gaze hardened as she confronted Asher. Who on earth are you? And why are you going this far to hide your identity? Lord Asher? He chuckled, clearly amused. What's so funny? Aria asked, a little irritated. Nothing. Everything you're saying is right, so I have nothing to add. I'm sorry for making you uncomfortable, he replied, still smiling. I was just eager to get to know you. Why do you want to get to know me? Aria asked. Her tone was serious, her mind racing. He hasn't shown any signs of liking me, and I've never led him to believe he had a chance. Asher paused before answering. Well, I have several reasons. The biggest is your advice to the Count about his fur business. Your ability to predict trends is impressive. So, he values intelligence, Aria thought, feeling a bit tense. Just from the gathering tonight, it seems you enjoy being surrounded by intelligent, non-judgmental people. She remarked. I do, actually, he said, his smile never wavering. But I'd feel more comfortable if we trusted each other more. Telling me who you are would help strengthen that trust. Asher hesitated. I'm afraid revealing my identity isn't an option right now, he said lightly. As the crown prince, I'm still unable to fully assert my power over the nobility. Revealing myself wouldn't benefit me at this point. I apologize, but your reasoning makes perfect sense. Aria's brow furrowed. Fine. But don't make me wait too long for your answer, she said, turning away with a slight flush, trying to hide her discomfort. I insisted that he tell me today, and now he's putting me off. Thank you for your patience, my lady, Asher said. Do you have any guesses about who I might be? Pardon? Does it matter when you won't tell me who you are? Aria responded, irritated. Why ask me? I'm curious about how you see me, he said, his voice calm. Aria hesitated. At first, I thought you might be a country noble trying to make a fortune in the city. But your wealth, the gifts you sent, and the way you speak made me reconsider. You could even be the crown prince, but no one engaged to Lady Isis would act this way. Asher leaned closer. You really are much more perceptive than I imagined, Lady Aria. She flushed slightly, continuing, but I concluded that you must be a nobleman I don't know. You seem to enjoy keeping secrets, Lord Asher, she added, walking toward the entrance, signaling that their conversation was over. I look forward to your attendance at our next gathering, he said, bowing courteously. Aria paused before replying. I'll think about it. A few days later, Lane visited the Rochent Manor and presented a bouquet to Miel. How kind of Mr. Lane, Miel remarked with a smile. He keeps sending these bouquets, even though he's busy. It's nice that he wants to stay in touch. That's fine by me, Count Rochent agreed, laughing. I think he's interested in Aria, though, Miel added with a sly smile. Is that what you think, too? Count Rochent chuckled. I wasn't just jumping to conclusions, Miel said. Father, is the warehouse I suggested coming along well? Aria, ignoring Miel's comments, turned to the Count. Yes, after a thorough evaluation, the warehouse project seems promising. We've made a lot of progress. Aria smiled softly. I can't believe my small idea is becoming a reality. It's like a dream. Count Rochent grinned. A small idea? It was so brilliant that I even thought about naming you the successor to my business. Aria smiled gently, her face a little puzzled. Of course, you're a woman, so that's impossible. Still, he said, smiling, I look forward to what you'll come up with next. Let me know if you have more ideas. Aria nodded politely. Miel is in high spirits because she has Lady Isis and Lord Oscar on her side, and now the Count too. As I thought, I need to pave my own path, Aria thought, glancing at the cheerful Count and quiet Miel. Later, Aria and Annie were out for a ride. Where are we going, miss? Annie asked, noticing the change in their carriage. To the casino, Aria replied. Annie was concerned. But you're too young, miss. Aria showed her fake identification papers. There's a way around that. Just make sure you don't call me by name while we're there. Then should I just call you Miss? Annie whispered. That's best, Aria agreed. They arrived at the casino and were welcomed by a butler. Aria ordered 100 gold's worth of chips and 2 glasses of red wine. Aria joined a card table, and as she won, she quickly gained attention. The steward announced the ace of hearts, and Aria turned back time with her hourglass, securing a massive win. The men around her marveled, calling it beginner's luck. The following day, Aria returned, winning again, much to the astonishment of the other players. By the third day, she revealed the same card, stunning everyone. "Is she using magic?" they whispered, unaware of Aria's hourglass. The men watched in awe as Aria continued winning game after game. "What are the odds?" they exclaimed, shocked by her continued success. Using the hourglass 3 days in a row is tiring, Aria thought, feeling the exhaustion creeping in. She stood up from the casino table, motioning for Annie to follow. "Hey, are you just going to leave again without a word? Why don't we talk for a moment?" one of the men called, trying to corner her. Aria quickly whispered to Annie, "Let's split up and leave. Call the carriage to the front entrance and wait for me there." "Yes, miss," Annie nodded, and they quickly dashed in opposite directions. "Don't be like that, miss. Let's talk for a second. Tell us your secret method for winning," the men shouted, rushing after her. "These gamblers have no manners," Aria thought, picking up the pace to escape them. "Which way did she go?" one of the men asked. "She must be going to a private room to gamble where we can't see her." Aria kept glancing over her shoulder as she moved quickly through the casino's corridors. "I need to hide somewhere first," she thought. Just then, a door opened, and a man wearing a lion's mask spoke quietly. "This way." His voice sounded strangely familiar. "Wait, did I recognize that voice?" she wondered. "I've rented this room. You can stay here for a while," the man said, gesturing inside. Aria hesitated, but hearing the men's voices approaching, she entered the room and shut the door behind her. She stayed quiet until the sounds of footsteps passed. "Thank you for your help. I'll be going now," Aria said, turning toward the man. "Wait," he said, stopping her. "They probably haven't gone far. Please wait a little longer while I check." The man opened the door slightly and peeked outside. "Sork, break up the group and come back," he ordered quietly. "Yes, sir," Sorky replied, heading off to carry out the task. When the door was closed again, the man turned to Aria. "I actually wanted to ask you something. I've heard about your wins. How did you guess the cards right 3 times in a row?" Aria was caught off guard, but decided to answer. "I trusted my skill and placed my bet accordingly." "Your skill?" he asked, intrigued. "Yes, luck is a skill too, isn't it?" Aria smiled. Although she didn't feel ill will from him, she remained cautious. There was a knock at the door. The man opened it, and Sorky entered. "I've broken up the group, sir." "Good work," the man said, dismissing Sorky. He turned back to Aria. "You can leave now." "Thank you again," Aria said, walking quickly out of the room and exiting the casino. Alone in the room, the man removed his lion mask, revealing himself as Asher. "She stands out too much to hide behind a flimsy mask," he muttered. Sorky entered. "Lord Asher, Vika will be reporting soon." "Oh, has the deal gone through?" Asher asked. Vika soon arrived and explained. "Viscount Vig is interested in purchasing the casino as soon as he gathers the necessary funds. He doesn't want us to sell to anyone else in the meantime." Asher nodded thoughtfully. "I see. He's eager, but even he doesn't have enough money to seal the deal right away." Vika continued. "We've been putting pressure on him to make the deal, and it looks like it will go through smoothly." "I had someone casually mention that the Crown Prince is having trouble running the casino and wants to sell." "The Viscount jumped at the opportunity," Asher said, his tone slightly cynical. "But it's clear the nobility are underestimating me. Fine. We'll use it to our advantage." "Did you tell him to keep the deal from Lady Isis?" Asher asked with a sigh. "Of course," Vika replied. "The Viscount wants to avoid having to answer to House Frederick." Asher leaned back in his chair. "We'll also put financial pressure on him, so he'll have to rely on the casino more. When the right time comes, we'll shut it down, and it'll send a strong message to the nobility." Sorky spoke up. "We can't do anything about Count Rashent's warehouse tax evasion, though. The laws won't allow us to intervene." Asher's face darkened. "I'll change the laws if I have to. Those nobles are just playing tricks. I'll find out who came up with the idea and deal with them accordingly." Vika smiled tensely. "Should I take care of that, Your Highness?" Asher's expression grew even more serious. "No, I'll handle it." After Vika left, Asher sat in deep thought, recalling Aria's question from their last meeting. Who on earth are you, Lord Asher? He rubbed his temples. That's what I want to ask you. Why does your presence always linger in my mind? Your knowledge, your beauty? No, it's more than that. You sway my heart without reason. Back at home, Aria removed her wig, placing it on the table. There are so many zeros on this check, miss! Annie exclaimed, noticing the amount. But you won't be going back to the casino, will you? Aria sighed, relieved. No, I'm done there. The hourglass only lets me manipulate a few games, and I can't bet enough to make it worthwhile. I don't need a monopoly with this much money, she thought, but it's enough to start a business. Annie, I need your brother's help. I'll reward him well, so bring him to me immediately. We have a lot to do. Annie nodded, sensing the seriousness in Aria's tone. Andrew appeared before Aria, looking a little confused. You want me to buy as much sugar as possible? That's right. Please purchase as much as you can with the money I've given you, Aria replied, her tone firm. If it's sugar you need, there's only one wholesale dealer with a monopoly on it, so buying in bulk shouldn't be an issue, Andrew explained. Exactly. Sugar is a luxury item, and the nobles control its supply routes. Soon, the noble from Pinonua will cut off all luxury item traders, just as he has in the past. It'll be difficult for me to intervene. So I've chosen a luxury item that's easy to manage and buy in bulk. I'm going to dominate the sugar trade. Aria thought, a smirk forming on her face. Later, at a gathering with her friends, one lady spoke, causing murmurs among the group. Did you hear? Viscount Serby? Yes, I heard he lost his clients, another lady said. Goodness, Viscount White also lost his customers, someone else added. Those are my tutor's husbands, Aria thought, overhearing. They have no territory and come from small families, so they can't expand their trades. Those women kept pushing me to meet their sons, hoping to leech off House Rossent's power and wealth. I'm worried this might affect our family too. I know. People are whispering that the enemy might be someone within our circles. Everyone is suspicious, a lady commented. Aria kept silent, her thoughts racing. An enemy within our circles? The culprits are targeting smaller houses that were granted monopolies by the greater houses. This plan seems too thorough to be an outside job, but it's clear that the noble from Pinonua is behind it. She paused. No, wait. This will hurt the nobles more than anyone else. The powerful ones at that. If someone were to attack the nobles, it would be the crown prince. Could it be that the crown prince's people are using a foreigner to carry out their plot? Aria wondered. Lady Aria? Aria snapped back to reality. Sarah! When did you get here? She exclaimed, flinching slightly. I'm sorry. Did I scare you? Sarah asked, her voice full of concern. No, I was just spacing out, Aria replied, shaking her head. Is it because you're worried about your father? Sarah asked. Aria looked stunned. What? I don't believe House Rossent will fall because of this. If there's anything I can do to help, please tell me. Sarah said, her eyes sparkling as she clasped Aria's hands. Sarah, Aria whispered, her face flushed. Even if House Rossent falls now, the next 3 generations can survive. But it's sweet of you to worry. What a good girl, she thought, touched by Sarah's kindness. By the way, Sarah continued, her voice quieter, the Marquise confessed to me. Goodness, Aria gasped, her face turning red. You're the first person I've told, Aria. The Marquis wants to invite you over for dinner, especially since you're the reason we were able to meet, Sarah explained, smiling. What do you mean? It's all because of your own hard work, Sarah. All I did was tag along for the carriage ride, Aria said, smiling modestly. You're so modest, Aria. We're going to get engaged next spring. If you have time before then, will you join us for dinner? I wanted to introduce you to the Marquise for the longest time. I want him to see what a wonderful friend you are, Sarah said, her eyes shining with affection. Of course, Sarah, Aria replied, blushing. Sarah, you truly are the best investment I've made so far, Aria thought, feeling happy. Later, at a social gathering with Asher and other nobles, the conversation shifted to the recent wave of financial troubles. So, if this situation persists for 6 months, 5 families will go bankrupt. The lower nobles, dependent on the upper ones for their livelihoods, will fall easily, Lane said. Aria observed the conversation, thinking to herself, as I expected, we're discussing the nobles' loss of clients. But the debate is less about who is behind it and more about who will suffer. One noble laughed. This will certainly hurt the Duke's house. It'll damage the Count's house too, Vika agreed. Aria sipped her water, her mind still processing the situation. These people seem to be enjoying the suffering of the higher nobles, she thought, unsettled. Oh, and Viscount Vig will start engaging in illegal activities using the casino, one noble remarked. He'll likely tamper with the odds and increase the number of guests. The casino is the only place that can quickly replenish the nobility's funds. Aria's attention snapped back. What does Viscount Vig have to do with the casino? It's nothing major. Recently, Viscount Vig purchased the casino that the Crown Prince put up for sale, the noble explained. What? But why? Aria asked, stunned. Asher observed her with a calm gaze, and the room fell silent. Did you not think the Crown Prince would sell the casino? Asher asked. I didn't, Aria replied, tense. Why not? Asher smiled, his eyes playful. Because he didn't sell it the last time around, Aria thought, remembering her past life. The Crown Prince managed the casino until it went bankrupt and faced harsh criticism. But the Crown Prince only took over after Viscount Lupra. Wouldn't it seem odd that he's already handing it over to Viscount Vig? Aria asked aloud. Asher's expression remained calm. Perhaps he was just managing it temporarily, to conduct an investigation. Once the investigation is over, he would hand it to a suitable person, no? A suitable person? Aria repeated, pausing to think. But Viscount Vig is a staunch supporter of the nobility. How could he be the right choice? Her eyes widened in realization. Ah! If the Crown Prince's supporters are behind this, then Viscount Vig would be the right person to manage the casino for their purposes. The higher nobles are in trouble, and this could be their chance to exploit it. Aria's thoughts swirled as Asher gave her a small smile. I think you're right. It's all coming together now. As they walked out of the meeting, Asher commented, My lady, your insight was as impressive as always. I don't know, Aria replied, unsure. I was just guessing. Asher smiled softly. Your modesty is just as impressive as your intelligence, but I hope my feelings reach you, Lady Aria. Aria's face flushed. Oh, all right. You're too kind, but thank you. It's fine that he's showing interest in me, but I can't open my heart to someone with so many secrets. Aria thought as she climbed into her carriage, her face still warm from the compliment. The next morning, Miel stood in front of the mirror, fully dressed and ready. Now, I'm ready to receive Lady Isis, she said, her reflection showing confidence. On her way to Rosent's villa, Isis was deep in thought. Viscount Vig has taken over the casino? That idiot, she fumed. He's blinded by the quick money, making such a foolish mistake. But he says he tricked the Crown Prince into selling it to him at a low price. He'll profit, sure, but that's nothing compared to the chance to use this as leverage against the Crown Prince for mismanaging it. Isis pondered who could be behind this, suspecting that someone from the Crown Prince's faction was involved. The Crown Prince, hiding away from the pressure of the nobility, wouldn't have come up with such an idea on his own. Someone is feeding him intelligence. As she stepped out of the carriage, she was greeted by Miel with a bright smile. Welcome, Lady Isis. Apologies for being a little late, Lady Miel, Isis responded with calm politeness. That's perfectly fine. I hope your journey was comfortable, Miel said warmly, guiding her to a table in the garden. I brought you something, Isis said, as her maid presented a bottle of tea. This is summer black tea from the Weird region. I had the merchant set aside an extra container just for you. Miel's eyes brightened. You bought such precious tea for me? Thank you. She exclaimed, I'll have it brewed right away. As they settled into their seats, Isis admired Miel's brooch. That brooch suits you very well. Is that a blue diamond? It was a gift from Lord Oscar, Miel replied with a smile. Really? How tasteful, Isis said, feigning interest. I've never seen such a beautiful blue diamond before. It's not just the diamond, Isis continued, her smile barely concealing the venom in her words. Oscar was wearing a similar brooch recently. I asked him about it, and he said it reminded him of you. It seems he sent you a matching one. Miel blinked, her surprise evident. Lord Oscar did that? Of course not, Isis thought darkly. That brooch is too gaudy. It's clear the prostitute's daughter gave it to him. How could I let that slide? That's why I had the jeweler make a matching piece. She thought for a moment before adding, Miel Rochent, you know Oscar wasn't the one who sent you the brooch, and yet you're pretending not to know. This is how a noble should act. humoring those above them and managing those below them. The Count should have sought a higher-ranking match for his remarriage, not a prostitute. He'll tire of her eventually, and our family is expected to ally with him? It's disgraceful. Isis turned to Miel. How hard it must be to live with someone like her. She can be quite unpleasant in person. She can be, Miel replied softly, her smile tinged with feigned sympathy. Perhaps it's best for you not to meet her. I'll speak with her myself, Isis said decisively, summoning her maid. Tell Lady Aria to come down here. Miel seemed tense as Aria entered, bowing respectfully. I apologize for being late to greet you, Lady Isis. She's more polite than I expected. Anyone can learn manners in 2 years, though, Isis sneered inwardly. But that's all she knows how to do. Hello, Lady Aria, Isis said coolly. The clouds have parted, haven't they? The sunlight seems much brighter now. Aria seated herself, sliding her hourglass case onto the table. I didn't dare come down without your permission, my lady, she replied, her tone respectful. Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have been more considerate, Isis said with false sweetness. I've heard some rumors lately casting a shadow over your family. How's your education coming along? Thank you for asking, Aria replied softly. I'm working hard to repay my father's kindness. You and Miel were the ones spreading those rumors about me, Aria thought bitterly. Isis smirked, her eyes narrowing. Hard work isn't enough. You must make sure you carve out a name for yourself and your family. Aria nodded. I shall do my best, my lady. Isis then inquired, How is the tea? I doubt someone from your background would know the taste of high-quality tea, her voice laced with mockery. It's lovely, Aria responded calmly. She doesn't know a thing about tea, Isis thought with a sneer. But then Aria continued, It has that signature bitterness with a slight sour taste. It's summer black tea from the Cranberg region. I've heard it lowers body temperature and is perfect for the summer heat. Isis blinked, caught off guard. You know the name of this tea? She stuttered. Yes, Aria said with a smile. It's an honor to be able to enjoy such a precious tea. Isis was stunned. Aria, the lowborn, had correctly identified the tea. The insult stung, but Isis quickly masked it with a polite smile. I think it would have been even nicer with half a spoon of sugar, Aria added, smiling. Isis was quiet for a moment before dismissing her. You may leave now, Lady Aria. Thank you for your kindness, Lady Isis, Aria replied, bowing before leaving the room. In her room, Aria let out a tense sigh. I almost ended up being their laughingstock before using the hourglass, she thought, her eyes narrowing with malice. Lady Isis is definitely dangerous to me, she concluded. Annie, trembling slightly, looked distressed. I'm sorry, Miss Aria. It completely slipped my mind, she said, her voice shaky and eyes teary. It's fine, Aria replied, her tone calm but firm. I told you not to disturb me unless it was something urgent. Miss Aria? That's right. My brother sent me a letter. It arrived just a moment ago, Annie said cheerfully, her earlier tension fading. A letter from Andrew? Aria asked, her expression softening as she extended her hand to take the letter from Annie. Aria reviewed the letter in her hands, a small smirk forming on her lips. I made the transaction with the owner of Flower Mountain. I sold 5% of our stock to him at a price 10 times higher than the original. Good, she thought, setting the letter down. Now the nobles will start swarming the cafe. At the Flower Mountain Cafe, a group of nobles crowded around the counter, their desperation evident. Hey, where did you get the sugar? Don't just keep it to yourself. Share that information with us, one noble demanded. Share the information? The salesperson thought, barely masking his disdain. You lot acquired all the sugar and sold it to lower nobles like me at inflated prices. Aloud, he replied calmly, I barely got my hands on it too. Thankfully, someone who was able to sell me some turned up. That's why I'm telling you to let us know who that was, they insisted. All right. I'll make an inquiry into it. Please head back for today, he said, forcing a polite smile. Guess you're getting good business here thanks to the sugar. Don't be stingy and keep that information to yourself, another noble sneered. Of course, he replied with a light laugh, watching them leave. I paid several times its worth to secure that sugar. You think I'm just going to give up that information? At breakfast, Aria quietly observed her family as they ate. Miel, do you not have an appetite? Count Rosent asked, noticing her untouched plate. I'm sorry, father. I'll try eating more slowly. It's a little hard to eat, Miel replied, her voice tinged with sadness. The food doesn't taste that good without sugar. Count Rosin sighed. They've found a new supplier, but recently, the shipments have been held up at customs. I heard they still don't have permission from the Crown Prince. How can he be so unreasonable and slow to react? It seems he lacks flexibility, Miel added, sighing dramatically. How can he not think to take care of his people when they're suffering like this? Aria scoffed inwardly. Then, you nobles shouldn't have hoarded all the sugar in the first place. The nobles' greed turned sugar into a luxury item, and yet they still have the audacity to blame the Crown Prince. She ate in silence, her face betraying no emotion. I have less faith in the Crown Prince's ability to rule, Count Rochent lamented. If I were the Crown Prince, would I even want to take care of nobles like these? Aria thought, her lips curling slightly as she continued her meal. Late at night, Andrew met with the owner of Flower Mountain Cafe in a shadowy corner of the estate. You want me to pay 20 times the original price? The cafe owner exclaimed, his eyes wide with shock. You do know that the seller calls the price of sugar these days, Andrew replied evenly. But it was hard enough for me to pay 10 times the original price, the owner protested. My master isn't one to increase prices without reason. Certain conditions have been included to make this a fair deal for you, Andrew assured him. Certain conditions? The man asked, his brows furrowing in confusion. You will receive a high quantity of sugar at 20 times the original price. Afterward, you may use it however you see fit, Andrew explained. The cafe owner blinked in disbelief before the realization dawned. You mean I could sell it at 30 or even 40 times the original price? He stammered, his mind racing with possibilities. Precisely, Andrew said with a slight smile. Please, let me buy all of your stock, the owner exclaimed, trembling with excitement. Days later, the cafe was flooded with nobles, all clamoring for sugar at exorbitant prices. The owner smirked as the bidding war began. If I were the Crown Prince, I wouldn't feel sorry for them, Aria thought, her profits soaring. In her room, Aria sat with Annie while Barry served tea. Miss, I heard that the cafe owner sold sugar at 30 times its original price. Wouldn't it have been better for you to sell it yourself? Annie whispered. Aria replied calmly, I'm trying to stay inconspicuous. I even enlisted your brother's help for that. This was just a temporary investment. We shouldn't be greedy and aim for more than we originally planned. We need to diversify our investments to reduce risk. Really? Annie replied, surprised. Aria looked at Barry. Barry, when will you learn to set the right water temperature for the tea? And these cookies, why are they so bland? Barry flinched, clearly nervous. But sugar is hard to find these days, miss. I know that, Aria said coolly. But that doesn't mean you can bring me these awful cookies. Barry bowed. No, but... Don't you have any sense? Aria sighed, shaking her head. It's been weeks since you started serving me, and you're still thoughtless. That's right. Maybe you could pick some flowers or something and use them to improve the cookies, miss. Annie suggested, trying to lighten the mood. Aria paused. Money's hard to come by these days, too. Come to think of it, when I complained about the food before, I bought something to replace the missing sugar, scented oils. I bought mine from Baron Burboom's store back then. She remembered the early days when scented oils were becoming popular and made a mental note of it. I'll give Baron Burboom another opportunity for success. Let's see how he does with it. A few weeks later, Baron Burboom stood in his cafe, watching customers. More people are coming in lately, he thought. With sugar scarce, people are turning to scented oils. This investment fund came with a promise of 30% of the profits. It's a good opportunity to increase my oil supply. But who is Investor A? In Aria's room, Jessie brought a letter. Miss, you've received a letter and a gift. I have, Aria asked, closing her account book. She opened the letter and read, I've achieved great profits thanks to your foresight, Investor A. Please accept this gift as a token of my appreciation. Baron Burboom. Oh, Aria mused. She glanced at the gift Jessie held. It's a cravat. Looks like a gift for a man. Jessie flushed. Maybe they sent the wrong gift. Aria held the cravat. He must think I'm a man, just as I expected. It's perfumed, though. Good taste. Annie sniffed the box. You're right. It smells lovely. What should I do? Aria thought. I didn't want to make a direct move, but I can't just ignore this gift. She stood up. Annie, I'm going out. Help me get ready. Yes, miss. Where are we headed? We'll start with the clothing store. In disguise, Aria entered Baron Burboom's shop. She observed the atmosphere. Nice store, nice customers. A maid greeted her. Welcome. Are you buying a gift for someone? The gift boxes are over here. No, I've come to see Baron Burboom, Aria replied, removing her hat. She was escorted into a room where Baron Burboom stood, looking surprised. Hello, Baron Burboom, she said, smiling. He flushed, clearly taken aback. Do you know who I am? Aria softened. It's kind of you to escort me here. I'm sorry, but may I ask your name? He asked shyly, looking flustered. Aria considered him. I'm Aria Rochent. I came to give you something, Baron Burboom. His eyes widened. Rochent? Oh, I didn't realize who you were, he exclaimed, looking embarrassed. Really? Aria raised an eyebrow. I suppose I understand. You're just being polite. I have something to ask, she said calmly. Have you thought about your next business move? He looked uncertain. My next move? I'm focused on the oils, but they won't be around forever, will they? Aria nodded. Scented oils are popular, but they're not essential. The trend won't last. Baron Burboom smiled. I know. I thought of selling less concentrated oils at a lower price for commoners. Many envy the noble's luxuries. This way, we can profit longer. That's a good idea, Aria said. It sounds like a good investment. But, she continued, is it wise to tell me all this, especially after just meeting me? He laughed awkwardly. You seem trustworthy. I couldn't help but share. Trustworthy? Aria asked, intrigued. Yes, he said. Actually, an anonymous investor helped me get this far. You seem to have a similar way about you. Aria removed the cravat and handed it to him. I found that treatment a bit awkward. Oh, I'm sorry, he said, looking embarrassed. I tried wearing it, but it was too big, but it looks perfect on you. Aria stood and draped the cravat over his neck. It fits you perfectly. He looked at it closely. Wait. This is the one I sent to the anonymous investor, he said, now tense. I've come to return the gift you sent me, Aria said, smiling calmly. Baron Burboom stared at her, stunned.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more manhwa content. See you in the next one.